Okay, so we have a file to download today, census from fall of 17. I guess that was a fine one. It's almost exactly the same as the one that we created earlier, and you'll remember it. This will look familiar to you. I'm gonna go ahead and open it up. And this is the one that has the census data about counties in it, and then we made it so that we could compare counties easily. So you choose off the list and it would put, oh, apparently I need to enable content here. So you choose off the list and then it would put in the information for the next county very nicely. I don't know why we're comparing the whole state of Alaska to counties in Alabama, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So our chore for today then is to be able to create a way for us to allow the user to say, hey, I'm interested in taking a closer look at this data, this comparison, and I want to show a chart. Build me a nice chart that shows this data, and build me another chart for this data, and make me another chart for this data. And when you make that chart, let's put the first one right here, put the next one down below it, the next one down below it, and then kind of once we've gone down 3 or 4 charts, let's move over and put the next one here, the next one here, the next one here, and so forth. So that's where we're headed. So today's really about working with charts. Excel, one of the great things about Excel is what it can do with charts. And so we'll spend today seeing how to automate those. There's some things about charts that are not especially intuitive. So I think you'll be glad you had this class. So I'm gonna begin by recording myself making a chart. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. So I'll turn my macro recorder on. So developer tab, record a macro. Let's see, this is gonna be for a chart. I'll put Control-Shift-C, don't put Control-C for this, that would be terrible. Put a capital C in here, and I'm gonna call this Make Chart. Make Chart. Now, see, are we all kind of ready to go along with this? Anyone still saying, oh, I need another, a few seconds to get ready to go? Okay, so I'm gonna highlight the data that I want to chart. Oh, this mouse is fantastic. I'm gonna highlight the data I want to, can do it. Anybody have a mouse? Do you have a USB mouse? That would be awesome. You getting one too? Does yours have a cord on it? Oh, yours has a cord on it. Oh yeah, send me the microphone, the headphones too. I'll listen to something else while I talk. Thank you so much. I will forget that I've taken this from you, so be sure to get it in the class. Wonderful. Now we're about to find out if the problem here is the mouse or the computer. You might have a future in macrame. I don't know. Do you even know what macrame is? Yeah, it's like the pastime of the 1970s. We're gonna buy really fat yarn and weave plant holders out of it. All right, let's see if this highlights any better. Oh, look at that, that's wonderful. Okay, so I've highlighted, thank you very much. Oh, you saved the day. So, gold star for you today. Okay, so I've highlighted that data, and now I wanna highlight my headers as well. So I'll hold the control key down to highlight a discontiguous range, and now I've highlighted the data that I wanna chart. Now the truth is, I'd really like to highlight the name over here, so that would show up as a title, but it just doesn't chart it right if I do that. So we'll handle putting this text under the title of the chart ourselves. So now I am going to choose Insert, and I will use this little bar chart section here, and I'll choose the first bar chart. And if all goes well, that will give me a really bad chart. And I wonder if it's because I've got kind of Alaska in here. I'm gonna get rid of Alaska. And I'll have a bunch of code at the beginning that's no good, so let me try it again. Do that one, do this one, insert, chart. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. I think it was because we had the empty cell up here that it was guessing a little different at what I wanted. All right, so that just looks great. I'm gonna stop recording. Now, unfortunately, I had that false start, and so when I look at the code for this, should be in module 2. Module 1 is where we wrote our other code, so let's come to module 2. And let me just see if I can get rid of what I had here before. So I'm charting it here. There we go. So this should be similar to what you have if you didn't have that false step. Anyway, oh, the delete, I don't need to delete anything here. So here I'm selecting, there we go. I'm selecting some data. I'm making a chart. That looks pretty good. Looks all right. Questions? Yes. An entire line of code? You mean I'm just like so fast? How? Oh, how does he do that so fast? I come to the very first cell in the column and I shift down arrow. And the nice thing about that is that it selects the carriage return at the end too. So if I want to duplicate that line, I can just copy it, Control C, and then tap Control V twice. The first time replaces the one that's there, and then it just starts putting in new ones, including the carriage return at the end. Very nice. Okay, so a little background then on charts. The part about charts that is non-intuitive is that the chart object, and we'll see that right here. So here we're selecting our data, and we can kind of see this discontiguous range, can't we? There's one range here, B11 to F11, and then there's comma, a second range here, B1 to F2. So that's that discontiguous range getting selected. This activation is totally unnecessary. We can delete it, and this code would behave just the same. But now we're saying, all right, on this active sheet, we have, we're calling this add chart 2. Now, it used to be called add chart. And I guess they said, you know what, we're going to kind of change the way this works, but we're going to leave add chart around. Why did they leave add chart around and make add chart 2 instead of just changing the way that add chart works? Old code is backwards compatibility. That is, Microsoft understands they have to maintain backwards compatibility. Why? Because if they make a change that breaks all of my company's VBA code that I have working, I've got to redo all that automation. Where am I going to do it? I might do it in Excel, maybe. But that's all of a sudden I have to make that decision. And they don't want me to ever have to make that decision. They want me to say, oh, you know what? Pay another $100 this year or whatever it costs, you know, to run it and just keep going. So they said, we want to add charts differently than we've been doing it. So leave add chart the way it is, but we're going to record add chart 2 because it does what we're after. Now, but the question is, it's a method, it's clearly a method. What object or what kind of object, what class of object is it a method of? Yeah, the shapes object or the shapes, another word you could put in there that would be true. The shapes collection, yeah. So shapes is an object. It is a particular kind of object called a collection. And so add chart 2, oddly enough, I'm calling it from the collection of all the shapes on the worksheet, in this case, the active worksheet. So active worksheet has a collection of all the shapes, and that collection has property called, or method called add chart, we're calling it. And then we are going to, you know, it's going to return a reference to whatever it creates, and then we're going to select it. Now the question is, what will it return a reference to? What kind of object will it return a reference to? Yeah, a shape. It's going to return a reference to a shape. So the thing that's a little bit strange here that will be great if we get this kind of right out of the block, I guess out of the blocks, is that when I create a chart, there are 2 different objects involved. There's a chart that has all kinds of charty properties like axes and data ranges, and there's a bunch of them. And there's also another shape or another object created that's a shape. So the chart doesn't sit on the worksheet. The chart sits in a shape, and the shape sits on the worksheet. And so it's this distinction between these 2 different kinds of objects that can kind of throw you for a loop when you're first looking at this, trying to look at this code and understand it. So first big deal is it's going to return a shape. So let's start off just by we'll worry about defining this range here in just a minute. But let's start off by building that shape. So let me go ahead and get a reference to the sheet that we're currently on. So let me create a variable dim s as a worksheet, set s equal to, out of all my worksheets, I got one called compare. No, just to that worksheet. Now I'm going to activate, I want to make sure that's the active sheet. So if I run this and we've got, data on some, other sheet is active, go ahead and say s.activate. All right. Okay, so I've got a worksheet, but now let me create the other two shapes that I'm interested in having. One is going to be a chart. I'll call it CHRT, chart, dim chart as a chart. Chart is a kind of object. It's a class of object. And let me also dim SHP as a shape. All right. So I've declared three different object variables here. One is a worksheet, one is a chart, and one for some reason, CHRT looks terrible to me. I'm going to just call it CHT for chart. And so we've got a chart and a shape. So now I'm going to come down here and look at this add. Instead of saying active sheet would work because what sheet has to be active now? Yeah, the S sheet has to be active. I just activated it, but even just because it's shorter, I'm going to go ahead and use S here. So now the collection of shapes on my S worksheet, I'm going to add the chart. Oh, and by the way, the two arguments here, 201 tells something about the style that I want it to be, and then this is telling me what kind of chart it is. It'll be a clustered column chart and style number 201. I don't know what style number 201 is, I know what it is. It's that right there. But I don't know what 201 stands for or if there's a name for it. Now, I don't want to select it because instead of selecting it, what I want to do is I want to bind my shape object onto it. So set SHP equal to the result of the add chart. The whole reason that I could select it before and why it's selected when the macro recorder is because when the macro recorder recorded it is because add chart 2 returns a reference to the shape that contains the chart. And so it then selects that shape. Now I am binding this on. And you'll notice, it's using that to figure out which thing is active to be able to decide what to do. We won't have to do that in our code because we now have the SHP object that is directly connected to that object. We can manipulate it directly. Okay, now let's go ahead and get this part figured out. So what we need to do here is we need to get this all figured out dynamically. We want to figure this out based on where the user has selected. So, and we did something similar to this when we were working with the user form. So let me just dim row as a long integer. And after I've activated the sheet, so I know I'm on this sheet, I just want to find out whatever row the user is on. And so I'm going to say row equals s dot, actually, don't have to say s because there's only one active cell dot row. Now, let's just kind of look up here at my Excel worksheet. I'm going to be using this to figure out which data I'm going to be charting. I know I have to get the headings. The headings are always going to be here, starting in B1 and going till we run out of data. But I have to know which data I'm actually going to try to chart. What's going to be on my chart? And so does it make any sense for me to let the user start on row 1? No, I already know I need row 1. I know I need row 2. So you might think, well, if row is less than 3, maybe we should make it 3. But even 3 is pointless to chart because what is 3? It's the code. What does charting the code do for me? It happens to be a number, but they're not really values, they're just labels, right? So I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, listen, if my row is less than 4, that's not chartable. If it's less than 4, let's just make it 4. So if row is less than 4, then row equals 4. Okay, so now I know all the rows that I have to have selected when I build the chart, because I'm going to have whatever row is the row variable is referring to, and I know I've got to have the rows, these first 2 rows. I know that my data is always going to start in column B. That's where the data always starts. What I don't know is where the data ends. Because the whole point here is that we want the user to be able to say, here's the set of counties I want to compare. It could be 3. It could be 12. I don't know. I mean, we could probably put a whole lot in there. The chart would be unintelligible, but however much they want to put in, that's what we want to be able to support. So we need to also now know where the data ends. So I'm going to go ahead and figure that one out here as well. So I'm going to have a column, and the column will just be our ending column, but instead of calling it ending column, I'm just going to call it call. So dim call as an integer. By the way, why do I do long for row and integer int for column? It's only like 16,000 or 64. No, there's like 16,000 columns. Wait, is there? Now I've forgotten. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should be using long for this too. Let me go way over here and just ask what the row of my active, the column of my active cell is. Yeah, it's only 16,000 columns. So that fits just fine in an integer. So now let's figure out where our data ends. And I think the way I want to do it is I'm a little hesitant for referring to column 1, because column 1, if it's a state, that's the problem we have with Alaska. If it's a state, nothing shows in column 1. So I'm going to come to column 2. I'm going to come all the way to the right, and I'm going to do a control left arrow to find out what this column is. Let's just go ahead and do that to set the column. So we're setting the row right here. And now let's set the column. Call equals, okay, now I know that my worksheet, my compare worksheet is the active sheet. So I can safely refer just to cells and know I'm talking about this worksheet. So cells, row number something, column number 2. We'll figure out the row here in just a second, it's a little complex. And we'll say dot end XL to left. And then we'll want the column of that. Now, what we want is the very last, oh, I'm sorry. The row we want is 2. It's the column that's a little more complex. I want the very last column. How do I do it? Columns.count. So columns.count should show us 1634. Let's come up here. COLUMNS.count. There's that same number. So that was my very last column. And from that very last column, I'm going to say end XL2 left. It'll like hitting control left arrow, bumping into that cell, and then I'm asking what the column is. So now I think I have all the information that I need. I know the 3 rows that I'm going to need. I know the column is going to start in B, going to end in column call, whatever call is holding. All right, so now I think I'm ready to build a reference to the range that I want to select. Question?
Could you not say, since we're just trying to get the headers, could you not say start at B2 and control right?
Why not just start at B2 and do control right? I mean, wouldn't that do the same thing? Let's do it, control right. Yeah, that looks like it would do pretty good. The reason that's a problem is that and the reason I didn't do it that way is that let's just suppose that someone is trying to make a chart of just one thing. Listen, charting one thing is pointless. But if I was here and if I did, and I hit control right arrow, what would that do? All the way to the end. Yeah. So it's a little bit better, but you're right. It's for a use case that's pointless anyway. So it would have been just fine to do that. It would have been a problem though if I had been on, definitely don't want to do it on row 1, but B2 I think that'd be okay. That's a totally reasonable way to do it. All right, now we've got a little bit of heavy lifting to be able to get the right discontiguous range selected. Let me go ahead and start off by getting just one of those 2 ranges selected. So, in fact, let's just go ahead and do it up here. I'm just going to say, we'll start with the first one. I'm going to try to select that first set of data. Come on, scroll over there. There we go. So, I better put some more data on here so we have something to chart. Let's go back to Alabama. We got Tuscaloosa and Tallapoosa. That's great. Where do they come with these names? I love it. Is there another one that's more like kind of like that? No, the rest of them are more European. Oh, and limestone. Okay, there's our three counties. No, I got Tallapoosa. Oh, and I do have Tallapoosa. You're right. So isn't Tuscaloosa? Oh, Tuscaloosa is a city. I wonder if Tuscaloosa is in Tallapoosa County. All right. And I'm trying to get those over here so I can kind of see them get selected when my code is up. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to do a multi-cell range. Range, we'll bring this code into our code. I'm going to play with it up here. Range, my first cell is cells B1. So I'm going to start right up there. That's where my data, my labels start. So cells, I'll just do row number 1, column number 2. I could say range B1 would be fine as well. Or column number B1. Now, my second one is going to be cells, row number 2, column number, in this case, it'll be column number 4. But what in my code, what am I really end up putting there for instead of a 4, what's going to be here? My variable call. Let's try to figure out what that column is going to be. But right now, let's do that. And then let's just select it. So that selects that really well. Let's just get that part coded in. So I'm going to dim a range object as a range. So dim RNG as range. And after I set up my row and my column, I'm ready to set that range. So set RNG equal to, and I'm just going to copy this because this is pretty close to what I need. But instead of column 4, it's column call. I'm going to stop my code there, and I'll run it to that point and just see what I have inside range. RNG.address. B1 to D2. Perfect. That looks like just the address that I'm after. Now, let's go ahead and set range equal to the other one. And this is a little bit of range. We were setting range, and then we're immediately setting it to something else. This is kind of an interim step, and we'll put these together in just a minute. So another 2-dimensional range. This one won't be quite as, well, it'll be just about the same difficulty, I guess. And I'm going to have 2 cell references inside my range. So I'm going to start in column B, but what row am I starting on? I'm starting on row number row, right? So I've read the row from the active cell, so that's how I know the row the user wants to chart. And so instead of ending on row 2, I'll end on row. So now if I run that one, instead of having B1 to D2, it should be, I don't even know what row is right now. Let's find out what is row. I'm going to hover over it. Row is 4. And so if I print a little more space in my immediate window, if I print the address, yeah, so this one is B4 to D4. So that's this cell right here is the one that I'm after, or that range right there. But what I need to do is I got to get those both together. Fortunately, the good people in Redmond and Washington have anticipated this very need, and there's a really easy way to do it. If I've already got the 2 ranges defined, I have 2 expressions to get the ranges. Here, watch this. Let me just do, let's have the active cell is right here. I'm going to say I've got my active cell. That's a range. And what I want to do is I want that, and I want to take the union of that range and some other range. So let me put a comma here and put another range in here. Active cell dot offset 2. So 2 rows down. And maybe I want another discontiguous range. Offset 4. So I've got the active cell, 2 cells down from that, and then two more cells down from that. Now, instead of having those as 3 separate things, I'm going to make those arguments to a command. And the command or the function is called union. So I will say union, and I can give it up to 30 different ranges. And it will just put those together. The first temptation is to say, well, I've got these two ranges, just use a multi-cell range. But the first range is the first argument, the second range is the second argument, and that would work. It would syntactically valid, but it would give me one solid range with everything filled in between. I want two discontiguous ranges, and that's what union is for. So now if I'll just go ahead and select this, we'll see it select. And so now that has selected those three ranges as separate ranges. Question here? So here's what I'm going to do. I've got my first range set here. And now I'm going to change range. I'm going to set it equal to the union of, and always when I say this part, a Duran Duran song pops into my head. I think it's Duran Duran. What's the song I'm thinking of? Yeah, see, it's not your music. It was my music. It's the Union of the Snake. I don't even know what the song means, but that was the title. Plus RNG with what it currently is. I think it was Duran Duran. Duran Duran, okay. I'll refrain from playing it. So I'm now going to make a union of whatever the range currently is, which was defined here, plus whatever we just defined here. Could I have just done this in one step and dropped this in for this one? Totally, that would have worked just fine. I'm showing you this approach because the union statement lets you do up to 30 ranges, 30 arguments. But can you have more than 30 discontiguous segments? The answer is yes, by doing this, right? You can make one that's got a whole bunch of discontiguous ranges, and then you can just union that with something else, and union that with something else. So you can kind of go crazy. There must be a limit somewhere. I don't know what it is, but it's more than 30. Okay, so now I should be able to run this and then select that range. So rng.select. And something's wrong. I'm going to run both these again. There. And so now that is selecting the whole set. Questions? I think we're in pretty good shape. So we do have to select that range. So I'm going to kind of bring these. I'm going to put my row and I think I'll bring these two together. Those are logically similar to each other. And then I'll come in here and I'm ready to select that. So I'll probably do that right here as well, rng.select. Okay, and that's where we are right now. So I don't have to do this select that I recorded. I don't have to activate it, so I'm going to get rid of those. So we have barely anything else left to do. Let's take a look at what we have here. So we've got this selected, and now we're going to go ahead and call add chart. And add chart will build the chart based on what's selected, which is why we want to get that selected first. And now this next one, this looks a little bit hideous because we're setting the source data of the chart. And we're making it a range, and we've got now a string that does this kind of whole long range thing. Ooh. It turns out, as often the case, the macro recorder records excess stuff. We don't need this one. I'll reset, that's fine, reset my code. I'll get rid of stop, and I should be making charts. What did I make this? Control-Shift-C? I'm gonna be on one of these, Control-Shift-C. Oh, look at that, I got my three things there. Come to another one, Control-Shift-C. And I got a different one. DeKalb, Limestone, and Tallapoosa. Okay. So far, so good. I can now make a bunch of charts. They'll all be exactly the same shape. What do you want to do next? We got lots of things still to kind of do for this set of charts. What's next? You know, by the fact that you haven't said anything, I'm thinking you're probably thinking, this is enough. Let's go home. That's probably what's in your mind. But I do have some more things to show you. Go ahead. Yeah, let's put the title on it. right? And in fact, we probably just want this to be exactly whatever this label is. So we'll see that at the top of this one, see that at the top of this one. Chart title is just kind of dull. Sometimes you can say, oh, you know what? I just want to select that and build the chart. You can select the title and it will figure the title out. I tried all different kinds of ways to select it to make the title go automatically. I couldn't figure out a way, but it turns out it's not too bad to do through code. All I have to do is figure out what the title property is. So there's a question. Yeah. It opens a new tab with Chrome. That is so awesome. That is just great. I've seen this happen before, and it's always user error. But I'm trying to think of what it is that causes Chrome to open. And it's, yeah, all right, let's pause for a second. I'll come take a look. Pause recording. Whew, okay. So, where were we? We're trying to, oh, we're gonna go ahead and put the title on. Okay, so we've got the chart built. That looks delightful. And so now we're gonna put on the title. I guess I don't need 2 spaces in here. I'd like to have 1 there. Oh, I'm embarrassed to say that it took me like a half hour or more to find out how to put the title on a chart. I thought this should be simple. And even though Google was at my fingertips waiting to answer the question, I refused to Google it. It took about a half hour to figure out. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So first of all, oh, let's do one more thing. Here we're setting the shape equal to whatever gets returned. Now, it turns out that the title of the chart is not a property of the shape. I mean, the shape is what allows me I can move it to a different position on the sheet. I can stretch it. I can shrink it down. I can change the size and everything. It is a property of the chart object. And so far, we haven't bound our chart object onto anything. So we called it CHT. And so maybe we call it CRT. I don't know. See, I'll leave it CHT. So I'm going to set CHT equal to my shape object that I just defined in the line before, dot chart. So all shape objects have a chart property. And if there is a chart in that shape, then it's referring to a chart object. And so now I've got a reference to the chart. And I can change the title by saying CHT dot, and you would think that it's title. It's not title. It's a property. I'm going to let you define it. See if it takes you longer than a half hour to find it. When you think you see it, just call it out. Not name. Chart title, yeah. As if maybe we'll put some other kind of title on this chart besides the title of the chart. We'll have some other, I don't know what it would be. Is there an access title? I don't think so. There's an access property. Yeah, so you actually go to the access, and it probably has an access title property. I don't know. Maybe it has a title. I don't know what it has. But I'm interested now. So AXXES number 1 dot, lose my IntelliSense up there anyway. Okay, so I'm after chart title. And when I finally found chart title, I thought this is great. I'll just set my chart title equal to some title and be in good shape. Didn't work at all. It turns out chart title is not the end of the line. In fact, anytime from now on whenever I go to the property, is this the end object? If you hit dot and something else comes up, it's not the end. So you can't set the title just by setting the chart title equal to something. It's not caption. I'm not sure what caption does. Characters would do it, but that's not the best one. Or not name. Text, there it is. Oh, but wait, there's more. Hit the dot. Oh, no, there's not more. So that is the end. Equals, and now we're ready to put the chart title on. Great. So cells, row, column number 1, dot, because it's just, right, whatever row we're on, just whatever's in column A. In fact, maybe I'll put column A there, dot value. Excellent. So now I'll come back and I'll delete these poor titleless charts, Control-Shift-C, and now I've got a chart. I think I want a couple more counties on here. Control-Shift-C, and I've got that item, Control-Shift-C, I've got that one. I don't like the fact that I have to click on a different one. I mean, the truth is, if I'm really making these charts, I probably do want to click on them, but for ease of operation here at the console, the very end here, I'm just going to say cells, row number, row, column number 1. It's actually row +1 dot select. This is going to select the next row down. So now I can get chart happy, Control Shift C C C C C C C, and I've got all kinds of different charts because it moves down to a different data element each time I run it. And that makes me really happy. So I'm just at the end saying select the next row down from whatever row we just charted. Only problem with making charts that easy to make is I got to delete them. I'm going to make a method. I'm going to make a sub-procedure to delete my charts too. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we'll get to position in these. So sub-delete charts. Whoops, I'm trying to do underscore. I think it's a little more readable. All right. So I'm gonna take you down a road that has an error kind of pre-built into it. So let's just go ahead and do that. We'll see the error and we'll see how to fix it. So I am going to dim x as an integer. Now as it turns out, there's a collection of shapes, all the shapes on the sheet. There's a collection of charts, all the charts on the sheet. But there's also another kind of wicked collection. It's a great collection. Wicked may be the wrong word for it. It's like a hybrid. It's called the chart objects collection. And the chart objects collection is a collection of shapes that have charts. That's kind of nice. So let me dim S as a worksheet. And let me get bound on to the right sheet for this, just like we did before. And now I'm just going to have a for loop. You might think that the for each loop is totally wired for what we're about to do, because I've got to do something to all these charts. And the truth is, that would also have the same problem that we're going to see here, but it would be harder to fix. So I'm going to show you kind of the for next loop approach to this, and then it'll be pretty easy to fix from there. So for x equals 1, 2, my worksheet, so s dot chart objects dot count. So if I have 12 charts on my worksheet, loop is gonna iterate from 1 to 12. If I have 6, it'll iterate from 1 to 6. Next, I'm just gonna print like the names of these. So print debug.print s.chartObjects s.chartObjects.name. Maybe I'll also print off x. So now when I run this, it should print for every debug.print x s.chart sub x. Because chart objects is my collection of, this is my collection of all my chart objects, and I want to print the name of a particular one. So I give it the index that I want to print in the middle, and we should be good to go. So it's, chart 8, chart 9, chart 12. And those really are the names of the shapes. If I just were to say, it's also, let me just come here and print the names of one of my shapes. So active sheet, shapes, number 4. See, that's chart 10. So these are the names of this really is a reference to a bunch of shape objects, but the chart objects is a collection that are shape objects that have charts in them. So it's kind of nice to have when we're working with chart objects, with charts. All right, so now all I want to do, I'm going to print the name off, and now I'm going to delete it. So chart objects sub x dot delete. And that should print off and then delete. This looks great. And it printed a bunch of them. Then I got an error. Method chart objects failed. It worked fine on a bunch of, how many did it work on? Let me end. It worked fine on 4 of them, and then it quit. How many did I have before? Anyone see why it's quitting? Why it's dying? Oh, yeah. Yes. So here's what happens is that I start off, I got 8 chart objects. I start off, it says, hey, we're gonna loop from 1 to 8. Great. We delete the first one. How many chart objects do I have? 7. I go to the next iteration through the loop. X goes up to 2. I delete there, and now I have 6. X goes to 3. Now I delete that one. It goes to 6. I have 5. X goes to 4. I delete. I've got 4. I should be okay there. I try to get to the next one. I'm trying to print the 5th one, and there is no 5th one. It's gone. So how do I fix it? I don't need to be printing these anymore. How do I fix it? Set the count to be a variable. Oh, so maybe you're thinking just make this a variable and then just drop that variable in here, and that won't work because for a for next loop, the way it works is that when we start the loop, we know how many times we're going to iterate. Well, we know what the top value is. So when X gets out of bounds, so we never look again to see, are we out of bounds? Go ahead. No? In the back? Oh, so that'd be a good option. Let's do it this way. So for X equals chart objects count to 1 step -1. This totally works. Because now when we're 8, we delete the 8th one, and then we delete the 7th, 6th, all the way up, and we always have room to delete the one that we're trying to delete. That's not the slickest way, though. I'm going to go back. That would totally solve the problem. Easier way is to just delete the first one. When I delete the first one, everything else will shift up into that position. So I'll just delete the first one however many times we have. Either way works. We could step backwards through it or just delete the first one that many times. Maybe even a better approach to this would use a do loop. Do until chart objects.count equals 0, and just keep deleting the first one until they're gone. But if we had done this kind of screams out initially for each loop, because we want to do this for every single object in the collection. But the fact that we're deleting them makes things go a little haywire. Yeah. Could we create a constant equal to the number beforehand? And then would that work? And the answer is that would have exactly the same effect as doing this. That was a suggestion similar to the suggestion over here, make a variable that does it. But the problem with that is that with the for next loop, when it runs, it looks at this only once. And that is when it starts. And so it really is a constant expression. It's going to be, if I have 8 charts, it'll be 8 when it starts and it'll stay 8. We don't ever look at it again. It just knows, it doesn't have to look at it. It goes, that's my boundary condition is 8. Okay, so now I think we're in good shape. So now I should be able to, oh, this is delightful, except I probably want to put a shortcut key on this one too, so I can run it. So let me go to my developer tab, my macros, let me find delete charts, go to options, and I'll make this Control-Shift-D. So capital D. So now Control-Shift-D will delete my charts. Control-Shift-C will make a bunch of charts. D deletes them. Oh, I'm pretty happy about that. I can make a bunch of charts and delete them all. Okay. Questions? All right, we only got one more thing. Well, a few more steps to do. But what I'd like to do is when I create a chart, I want that chart to go right. I want that chart to go right here. Boom. Just to the right of whatever my data is, and just a hair down from the top. It might be tempting to push it all the way to the top, but to me, it feels like it needs just a little bit of a margin there. So I'm going to put it down just a little bit. Are we ready to do it? Let's do it. So after we create it, so here we've got things created. Before we select down to the next sheet, right here, I'm ready to position that chart. Well, positioning the chart is pretty easy, but let's think about that margin. I'm probably going to want that same small amount of space between my charts as well. So maybe it's been a while since we made a constant. Let's remember how to make a constant. I'll come up to the top and say const margin equals 5. Now, what units do we work with when we're moving shapes around? There's probably a word for the units. In the 1990s, they came up with a unit called TWIPs. I'm pretty sure it's not a TWIP. I don't know what TWIP ever stood for. It's definitely not a pixel, because if it was pixels, it would be dependent on how far I was zoomed in, right? Because now there's way more pixels on that row than there is when I'm zoomed way out, right? There's fewer pixels there. So it's not pixels, but it's just some units that you need to get used to, and they're relative to the upper left-hand corner of the sheet, right? Because you can't put a chart to where it's hanging off the sheet, sticking up here, you know, covering over the ribbon or something, right? It's going to be on the sheet. And so our origin is the upper left-hand corner of the sheet. And 5 is about what I've shown there. So that's about 5. I want to say TWIPs. It's not TWIPs, but it's some units. Okay, so I've made my margin to be 5. What type will this be? It'll be some type that can hold a 5. The interpreter will choose a type. That's fine. So now I've created a chart. And so I'm just going to say, what objects do I want to use to change the top position of the chart? I'll narrow it down. It's either the worksheet, the shape, the chart, or the range. Like multiple choice. This would be a good question for the final exam. I'm going to go write that right now. Which of those charts, which of those am I going to manipulate to change where the chart appears? In the back? Yeah, the shape. The shape's what holds the chart. The shape's what I position. It's what I size. And so I've got my shape object bound onto whatever the add chart method returned, add chart to method returned. So now I'm just going to say shp dot top, the top property, equals my margin. Let me 5 little units down from the top. Let's set the left of it too. shp dot left equals, oh boy, where do I want it to go? In this case, right, just a little bit past the beginning of column G, but that's totally dependent on how much data there is. Well, it turns out I can change the position of a chart by changing its left property, but although I can't change it for a cell, I can read the left position of the cell. I can't change it. I mean, if I want to change it, I got to change the width of what comes before it, but I can still ask, what units is your left boundary at? So I'm just going to set that equal to some range. So cells, row number 1, column, yeah, I've already figured out where my data ends. It's col. Now, it turns out that my column, or my cell, has a left property, and it has a top property. It doesn't have a right or a bottom property. And so the left property of my column col, or my col column, isn't the right one, right? In fact, let's just go ahead and do it that. I'm going to put left there. We'll see what it does. Control-Shift-D, C. Yeah, it put it right at the left. It's covering the data. It's like we don't want to see the last column of data. So what am I going to do? Yeah, you just talk about a different cell. Don't talk about that one. Talk about the next one over. Excellent. So instead of col, we'll put col plus 1. And instead of left by itself, we'll do left plus margin. I want it over just a little bit. Oh, now that should be beautiful. Control-Shift-D and then C. Oh, bingo. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? That's great. It just puts that chart. I want to see the chart and the code at the same time. How do I do? I don't know how to do that. Close this. And can I go low enough? Yeah, I can. Look at that. We got it right where we wanted it. That's beautiful. There's no right property. That's correct. But there is a width property. So I can take the left of the cell plus the width of the cell, and I can get to the right of it. But the right of that one happens to be right where the next one starts. Is the left of the next one. So that's a simpler way there. Now, only problem is every single chart goes to the same place. They're going around on top of each other. I don't want that. I want the next one to go right below it. That's not too bad. You ready to do it? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this only when it's our first chart. So let's put an if statement here. If s.chartObjects.count is equal to 1, we only got one. We just created one. There's going to be one. There has to be at least one. We just created one right up here. There has to be one. But if that's the only one, then this is what we do. Else, we'll do something else. Okay, so what are we going to do now? Where do we want it to go? The left is easy. Left is the same. Well, let's do the top first. So in this case, my shape dot top, tell me in English where I want it to go. Not quite at the bottom of the last one, but at the bottom of the last one plus my margin. Yeah, just a little bit below the bottom of the last one. So, but just like a cell, there's no bottom property, but it does have a top property, and it has a height property. So let's go ahead and find that shape. So we'll do chart objects. I can't use shapes easily here because I've got another shape right here. I don't want to get this one involved. Otherwise, I could use shape objects to do this, but we'll use a chart object. So chart objects, objects, and then I want to say right here, the most recently added one. How do I say it? If I have 12 chart objects, what number needs to go here to refer to? I actually don't want the most recently added one because that's the one I just barely added. I want the one less than the most recently added one. Yeah, just count the chart objects and subtract one off of it. Excellent. Oh, but it's not chart objects. I got to give it a sheet. So s.chartObjects. And which one do I want? I want s.chartObjects.count -1. And then what I want is the top property of that, dot top, plus, and I'm kind of giving kind of out of screen space here, so plus, and then I'll do a line continuation character underscore. Then I want the same thing. So I want that plus the height plus the margin. Ah, wonderful. So now I'm going to say, hey, I just made the 5th chart. Where do I want it to go? Well, find the 4th chart. Where does that one start? How tall is it? And give me a little bit more is what that says. And I want the left just to be exactly the same as the left of the last one. So I'll just copy that line. And shp.left equals my penultimate chart, my second to the last chart, dot left, just wherever that one is. Oh, I like it. I like this so much. I got to zoom out to really experience this one. So I need some runway so I can see what this does. Control-Shift-D to blow that one away and then add them in. Oh, baby. Oh, man, I want to scroll down and do it some more. Oh, I can't because it selects the cell. I don't want to zoom out some more. Oh, that's great. Control-Shift-D. Okay. But, okay, one last thing. Well, let's get a few in here. Control-Shift-C. Boom, 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 boom. I got some space over here. I'd like to use this too. So, I want to say maybe after I get 4 of them up there, I want to shift over and do some more. I don't want to keep going down and along. I want to look at my data. How big is my data? Maybe I want it to go about the size of my data. How big is my data here? Let me get another one in here. Control-Shift-C. Yeah, maybe that's one too many. 1, 2, 3. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I want to do 5. Okay, so let's go see if we can figure out how to make it do 5 and then bump over. All right, so if I'm number 1, I'll do this. Number 1 is always going to go upper left-hand corner. I think we don't have to think about that one. But now here we want to think a little more. We want to think a little more about this one. So let's do this. Let's say if. So I want to go down 5, and then I want to. So I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then go to the next column, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Go to the next column, 5, 10, 15, 20. So how can I say, is it one of 5, 10, 15, or 20? Yeah. Ah, yeah, mod is just built for this. It's beautiful, great. So I'm going to have some expression using mod here. Go ahead. Oh, so here's the question. You're saying there is a height property for a cell, and so I could just ask for the heights of each of the cells in, or each of the rows in a range. Oh, just go find out how much data there is. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we could do that. We don't have enough time to do that. But I like the idea, right? So we don't even have to ask, we don't have to ask for the height, because we could come to our last one and we could ask for the top of this. So we could keep going until our top is below the top of our last cell of data. I totally want to do that. I'm just not sure I can do it in 5 minutes. If I think about it for 4 minutes, I'll be sure I can't do it in the time remaining. Let's do that. Let's do this one, which I've been through a couple times. But I like that. I really like that idea. It's better, darn it. It's better than the idea that I have. So let's work out with mod. I like mod too. So so what I want to know is, and this is a little bit difficult because I'm not talking about how many charts there are, because by the time I got here, I've just created a chart, and that one may not be in the right place. So I want to look at one less than how many charts there are. So if one less of how many charts there are, and I want to bind that expression together, because mod happens before subtraction. If I don't have this in parentheses and I have like the mod in here, the mod will happen on the 1. I don't want that. I want mod on that expression, mod 5. That mod is like I'm yelling at you, but it'll shrink down in just a minute. Then we'll do something. Tab. Else we'll do something different. Something pretty close, but different. Okay. All right, so if we're on one of those that it's the one where we got to change, we'll do something different. We'll have to change this up here. Otherwise, we'll do it the way we've done it in the past. So this, I don't think we have to change the else part. It's just in the if part that we have to change. So what do we do if it's one of those that's mod 5? Oh, this is not too bad. The top is going to be what? Once I put my 5 down here, what's the top of the 6th one? Yeah, margin. That's easy. And now my left is going to be, oh, also not so bad. It is going to be the left of the last one. So here's the last one right here. And I want my next one to be where? Don't think about up and down, but left to right, it needs to be right here, just right to the left of it. So I'll make it the left of the existing one plus the width of the existing one plus margin, right? I think that's it. Let's give it a shot. I'm going to just go control, let's see, let me zoom out a bit. Control Shift D. Oh, actually, we have a little issue here. And that is, what happens on the very first one? When chart objects count is 1, what's my expression here? This is 0. What's 0 mod 5? 0 mod 5 is 0. Oh, so this should be if 0 mod 5 equals 0. So if that number mod 5 equals 0, 0 mod 5 is 0. So it seems like we should have a problem because we're trying to refer to chart number 0 here. But why is this not a problem? Why did that not have an error? Yeah, because when chart object, when the number of charts is 1, we don't come down here, right? We're only up here. So our first one is going to get put in the right place. And then let's go ahead and see what happens afterwards. Control-Shift-C. Here's the money shot right here. Oh, bingo, baby! I'm so happy. Uh-oh. There was no data. What was that? I don't know, but there was no data. I charted it anyway. So that's it. And we finished with like 15 seconds to spare. Any questions? Kind of a useful thing to be able to manipulate charts this way. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.